The New York Knicks are not done making moves. They have added yet another piece that could be very impactful for the playoffs and down the final stretch run of the regular season. We are going to dive into who that player is and what he is all about on this episode of Fireside Knicks right now. So the Knicks have now signed a player out of the free agent market, and that player is Jeremy Sochan, who was with the San Antonio Spurs for 4 seasons before he was released from the team earlier this week, and then he signed with the Knicks for a deal for just the rest of the season on a league minimum for money. So it's not that much money, and we don't have to make a corresponding move either to bring him in. We can keep everybody that we currently have on the roster while also bringing in Sochan. And Sochan is a player that the Knicks expressed interest in during the trade deadline time, and they didn't end up making a trade for him, but now they got him in for nothing. And they were able to bring in Jose Alvarado as well. So I think that is some very good work by Leon Rose right off the bat right there, that he was able to bring in two pieces that the Knicks had expressed a lot of interest in with basically giving up nothing. If you really want to total up what they gave up to bring in Alvarado and Sochan, they essentially gave up Gershon Yabusele and 2 second-round picks. That's nothing. That is absolutely nothing for the pieces that they have brought in, and I'm very impressed that they were able to get that done. And Johnny, I want to pass this off to you to kind of kick off this conversation about Sochan. What are some of the things that stand out about Sochan, and what kind of role do you think he's going to play on this Knicks team as this season comes down to the final stretch?
Yeah, so I like this deal for the Knicks. He's on a veteran minimum contract, so you really can't complain. And as you mentioned, we turned Gershon Yabusele into pretty much Jose Alvarado and Jeremy Sochan, so I can't complain there. Maybe when everybody's healthy, Sochan won't be playing all too much, but that's okay. And the potential is still there. This feels like a buy low, a low risk, high reward type of deal for the Knicks. He's still only 22 years old. He was a top 10 pick in the draft. And yeah, the offensive game isn't really there, but the defense, I really like it. He's got a mean attitude. He'll kind of stick up for his teammates like Jose Alvarado does. So I like that energy that the Knicks are going to bring into this locker room. But as I said, the offense isn't really there. Don't expect Jeremy Sochan to be, knocking down threes. That just won't happen. He won't be really creating his own shot. He shoots free throws with one hand, so it's like, what are you really expecting on the offensive side of the ball? But defensively, he's got size. He's intense. He's a good perimeter defender. He's not going to be fighting around screens, but in terms of just perimeter defense, isolation defense, he's going to be pretty solid for the Knicks. And I think Mike Brown can utilize him in different ways on the court. Say we need some more defensive versatility on the floor. Say we're up by 10 points. We want to get a little bit more defense on the court. Throw Jeremy Sochan out there. He'll do a job. So personally, I like this deal. As I said, veteran minimum contract. You can't really explain. Just adds more wing depth. Now, if it takes away minutes from Mohamed Diawara, I don't like that. I'm sure we'll get onto that. I want to see Diawara play more because the potential is clearly there for Diawara as a 3-and-D two-way player. So if Sochan takes away minutes from Diawara, I don't love that. But as a standalone deal, I can't complain. I'm happy with it.
Yeah, and Sochan is definitely an interesting piece just because of the things you mentioned, the defense, the physicality, the energy. The Knicks are clearly emphasizing bringing in guys that can not only energize the group but also play better defense, as defense was such a problem throughout the first half of the season. So it's clear that by bringing in, say, Alvarado and Sochan, that was their main emphasis, that they needed to improve on that end of the floor, that they believe in the offense, but they needed to improve the defense. And so far, we've already seen the impact with Alvarado in only 3 games. So I imagine with Sochan, maybe he won't play the same exact role as Alvarado. He'll probably play significantly less minutes, if any. But I feel like when he does get some burn, you will feel his impact. You'll feel his defensive presence. And I think what's most important about this is that it's depth. It's an insurance signing for injured players. It's a versatile player who's also still very young. He's only 22 years old. He is a year younger than me, which I think is crazy. I didn't even realize he was still that young until I looked it up afterwards. But, he's a former lottery pick. He's still got a lot of potential. He's definitely a solid NBA player. It's unfortunate that he kind of got phased out of the Spurs rotation, but he ended up landing with us, and I'm happy that we have him now. And I think he's going to be important because we've seen that they've dealt with a lot of injuries this year, right? OG Anunoby missed the last 4 games before the All-Star break. Deuce McBride is going to be out for some time. Mitchell Robinson still can't play in back-to-backs. So with all that being said, I think Sochan will be useful in a variety of different ways because with all those guys out, Sochan can play many different roles. He can play, the three position off the bench if he has to. He can even play a small ball center, kind of like what they envisioned Gershon Yabusele doing, but it didn't end up working out. So, even if he's not scoring points or he's not doing much offensively, you want his defensive pressure. You want that presence there. He's going to work hard on that end of the floor. And I think that's very important because, if he's able to make that kind of impact in the playoffs, for example, or even in these final games during the regular season, that's going to be huge for the Knicks because they're still fighting very much in a very tight Eastern Conference right now. So upgrading the team, upgrading the defense is definitely a priority of this team. And I think by bringing in Sochan, you're making that clear. And I do want to, move on to the next point that you kind of briefly touched on about Mohamed Diawara. I agree on this that I do not want Sochan taking away his minutes. Now, can I see Sochan getting a little bit of minutes and that means Diawara gets a little less? Yeah, I can. If he really wants to get Sochan out there, I understand that because it's a veteran player. You know what he's going to provide you compared to the rookie in Diawara. But Diawara has shown so much confidence, so much poise on both ends of the floor as a rookie that you, you really can't just take that away. You can't just like all of a sudden bench the guy or not play, knowing that he can be a very impactful player on a winning team, right? And I understand that it's kind of in hindsight that is kind of like the smart decision if you want to call it that because most winning teams shouldn't be relying on second round rookies, but at the same time with the way Diawara is playing you can't just punish him essentially just because they brought in Sochan. Now again, anything could happen between now and the end of the All-Star break, which is next week, but at the same time I'm still glad that they were able to bring in Sochan and not have to give up anything. Like if they would have had to trade somebody or if a guy would have had to get released, someone who had been an impactful piece, that would have kind of stunk a little bit just because I was very iffy about Sochan as well. But if the defense is going to be there, if he's going to show up on that end of the floor, he's going to make an impact and he's not going to cut into DOR's minutes, I'm all for it. And Johnny, I kind of want to pass this back to you for the next thing really and just, looking at what Sochan provides, we already know the defense and all that stuff, and we know he's an energy guy. Do you expect him to play in a lot of different defensive lineups? Like me personally, I could see some action with like him and Alvarado together because I think that kind of group together would give opposing teams straight hell. I really can see that happening, and I want to know if you think that that's a realistic possibility.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a realistic possibility. We were talking about the Mohamed Diawara minutes, and this may sound strange to begin with, but I could see Sochan taking away Ariel Hukporti's minutes. If you want to run like a small ball-ish lineup, Sochan could still rebound well, excuse me. He could finish around the rim, which Ariel Hukporti just can't do. I like Hukporti, and for like the last pick in the draft, pretty much like he's not bad, but like he kind of is. Hukporti is not really offering much, so I wouldn't be surprised if Sochan can kind of fill in the gap of, okay, he's a backup wing that we could plug in if, say, OG's hurt, Mikhail's hurt, which I hope that doesn't happen because that doesn't even seem like it'll ever happen. But like, say an OG's hurt, say a Mohamed Diawara's got to miss a game. You could plug Sochan in, but I wouldn't be surprised if he takes Ariel Hukporti's minutes because he could rebound, he could defend, and we could run that small ball-ish type of lineup that we tried to do with Gershon Yabusele. I mean, Sochan can guard the best offensive player on the opposing team and lock him down. So I think there's a lot of versatility defensively that Sochan brings to this lineup. And then you're at a point where you have OG, Mikhail, Sochan, Alvarado, McBride. I think Shamit's an underrated defender. You have Mitch. I mean, there's some real defensive backbones with this roster. And maybe outside of, Clarkson's not really getting, real minutes, but Brunson, Cat, outside of those two guys, where are like the poor defenders? I'm having a hard time finding one. Maybe somebody's slipping off the top of my head. I mean, Kolek, but he's not getting serious minutes. So this team has really turned around. And these past 10 to 12 games, we've been the best defensive team in the league. And now we're adding a guy who is a real legit perimeter defender. I like it. So I think there's going to be a lot more defensive versatility this lineup can see with the Alvarado, with, the Sochans. Maybe Mitch is in that conversation as well. At that point, the spacing isn't great, but for, a few weird lineups, a few minutes you could give these guys, I think there's a lot of defensive versatility that this lineup could have. So I'm excited to see how Mike Brown is going to employ Sochan. So yeah, I like the deal, and I think it's going to be really nice to see how this defense evolves with him in the lineup.
Yeah, no, definitely. And with the defense and stuff like that, I mean, I'm really intrigued to see how he meshes with some of these other guys because, as you just said, they have some real dogs on that end of the floor now. They have some guys that can
Yeah.
really get into opposing teams and that can really get their work going on that end of the floor, which I think is huge because at the beginning of the year, their defense was terrible. I mean, straight up, it was awful. They were like nearly bottom 20 or whatever you want to call it in defensive rating at the start of the year. But as you said, the last 10 to 12 games, they have been the best defensive team by far. Not even just like
If I
by a
could jump
small
in real
line. No,
quick
by
too, I have
far they
something
have
to
been the best
add real
defensive
quick.
team. And now they've added two defensive.
So I'm on
I'm
Basketball
sorry, what did you
Index.
say?
So yeah, I'm on Basketball Index right now, and they have a lot of really in-depth data that we could use to look at what type of profile we're getting. And when I'm looking at guarded data, so this is the type of players that Sochan usually guards. Matchup difficulty, he's in the 98th percentile. Guarded LeBron, which is pretty much how good of an offensive player he'll be guarding, 97th percentile. Guarded shooting talent, 99th percentile. So he'll be guarding really good shooters. Guarded one-on-one talent, 99th percentile. So this guy is really guarding the best players in the league and locking them down. So I think that's a lot of really nice versatility that he's going to bring. And then in terms of defensive positional versatility, 99th percentile. So this guy could really guard the 1 through 5. So I really like what he's going to bring to this defense. I think it's going to be huge.
Yeah, in essence, you're bringing in another guy who can guard team's best players, as you just alluded to with those numbers, and I really do appreciate that because that's very important information. And knowing that information, I wonder what Mike Brown's going to do about it. I wonder if he's going to deploy Sohan in many different ways because, as I said before, he has versatility. You can play this guy at the 3, you can play him at the 4, you can play him at the small ball 5. You have different ways to use him, and I think that's important to have kind of a flexible piece that you can use at pretty much any given point when you really need stops or even to fill in injury gaps or something like that. Because as I said before, OG's been dealing with the toe issue. Deuce McBride's out for a while. Mitchell Robinson still can't play back to backs, and you don't know what other injuries may come up in these final 27 games or so left in the season. So that's very important that we have a guy who can make that same defensive impact and kind of keep that side of the ball afloat. Because while the offense I expect to continue to be, really good, the defense is something we've always been weary about because we know they've been really good lately. Last 10 and 12 games been the best defensive team in the league by far, but we know how bad it was at the start of the year. We know that they've gone through a stretch this year where their defense was pathetic, where in that 2-9 stretch they were 20 other games as well, even outside of that stretch where their defense was just terrible. So knowing that can happen, they got to be able to keep that keep this group locked in on the defensive side of the ball. You got to be able to continue that continuity a little bit. And I think bringing Sochan isn't going to interrupt that continuity either. I think if anything, it's only going to improve more. I think Sochan is also a good energy guy, a good player. You can bring around these guys. He'll fit right in, I think. And I think he'll just be good to have as an insurance policy. You don't have to play this guy a ton of minutes. You don't have to give him 30 minutes a night or anything like that. You can just, give him maybe 10 to 15 spot minutes if you really have to. Make a defensive impact, make some plays, and provide basketball. He's no longer got to hold on to the keys of carrying a team like he did during his early years in San Antonio before Wembanyama showed up, where he was basically the guy. He's no longer in that situation, so that's good for him. And I think he'll thrive in this role. I think he'll thrive in New York, and I think the Knicks are only going to get better from here. We've seen how good their defense has been of late, and I think once we return to full strength, and once we get once guys like Alvarado and Sochan, of course, understand the system a lot more, it's going to get even better. So I'm really excited for that. I'm very, very excited. Before we do wrap it up, I want to give you an opportunity for any final thoughts on this deal or anything else that you want to talk about with this team. The All-Star break is still, it's coming up, and of course the return from the All-Star break is next week. So we still got some time before the Knicks play again, but I want to give you an opportunity to let out any final thoughts on Sochan and what else you could expect out of him as this season restarts, essentially.
Yeah, so to credit his defensive versatility, the two positions he guards the most: number 2, point guard; number 1, center. He guards the center position more than any other position, which is very interesting. So, as I talked about earlier, I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of fills in that Ariel Hukporti. He fills in for those Ariel Hukporti minutes. So, defensive versatility is going to be awesome. And for Fireside Knicks on this YouTube channel, I'm actually going to record a Jose Alvarado and Jeremy Sochan, player profile breakdown and deep dive. So you guys are going to really understand what these guys are going to bring to the Knicks after we're done with the All-Star break. But I love this deal. Can't complain. Veteran minimum. He's going to bring you elite perimeter defense. I like it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I like the deal. I think there's really nothing wrong with it. You can't complain when you don't have to give up anybody, and you're still under the second apron as well. I should point that out. So they're not
Credit Gershon
financially
Yabusele,
out
man.
of this.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Thank Gershon Yabusele for this. If Gershon Yabusele didn't go on that player option or end it to get us in a situation, we wouldn't have been Sochan at all. We wouldn't do it. We wouldn't have been able to stay under the second apron either. So I'm really glad that he did that for us. And as bad as it went for him in New York for Yabusele's sake, at least he respected the organization and he respected our pathway to winning a championship, despite him no longer being with the team. So
say we win a
I can
championship,
respect him for
Gershon
that a lot.
Yabusele is a
And as far
legend. He's a legend.
as Sochan goes, like I said throughout this episode, great signing. And I said you want to have a point. So I'll let you kind of interject.
Yeah, if we win a championship this year and Jose Alvarado and Jeremy Sochan are crucial parts, Gershon Yabusele is a Knicks legend. He gave up all that money so we could do this. So credit Gershon Yabusele. If we win, Knicks legend.
And Dalen Terry. Don't forget about Dalen Terry.
Yeah, let's go. Absolute Knicks legends. Hang them in the rafters.
Yeah,
hang the
don't
jerseys
forget
in the
about those
rafters.
guys. If it weren't for those guys, we don't bring in Alvarado. We don't bring in Sochan. So, hopefully, obviously, it's only been a couple games with Alvarado, and we still have yet to see Sochan in our next uniform. So, obviously, opinions can change as time goes on. But off the surface, I think these are great moves. These are very impactful moves, both of them. And I think it's really going to make a big difference for, our title odds. But I do think this is a good place to kind of wrap the episode up. We really hope you guys did enjoy this video about Jeremy Sochan. Let us know what you think about the signing in the comment section below, because we'd love to talk to you guys about all that stuff. You can follow us on all of our social media platforms as well. We're on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course this YouTube page that you just watched the video on. You can follow me and Johnny's personal Twitter accounts. We'll link those in the description down below. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Fireside Knicks. Peace out, and let's go Knicks.